Welcome to Scream Bloody Horror. I'm going to be rounding up my favorite horror movies of 2022. Let's do it. First one on my list, The Fireplace, Adult Swim Yule Log, directed by Casper Kelly. He did Mandy, Aqua Teen, and the Squidbillies. The Fireplace, Adult Swim Yule Log is a unique and entertaining take on the traditional holiday Yule log video. Rather than simply featuring a static shot of a fireplace, this features a variety of bizarre and surreal scenes set in front of a cozy fireplace that eventually turns into a full-blown horror movie that was really freaking fun. Without spoiling the rest of the film though, what I loved about it was the pacing between the humorous and offbeat jokes that permeate through the fairly disturbing and sometimes brutal scenes. From strange and absurd characters to bizarre and unexpected occurrences, there's always something new and interesting happening as the story unfolds on screen. I won't spoil it, you just gotta check it out. It's a ridiculously fun ride. You can watch it right now on HBO Max.
This isn't funny, Amber.
Would you like to play a game?
Scream from 2022. You know, all I can say about the 2022 release of Scream is I think Wes Craven would be really proud of what the director did with this movie. Directed by Matt Bettinelli, Olpin, and Tyler Gillett, they did Ready or Not, Southbound, and also VHS. Scream 5 does a fantastic job of updating the Scream franchise into the modern era while paying homage to the original movie and fans since the beginning of the franchise. Set 25 years after the original movie, a new killer puts on the Ghostface mask and targets a new generation of Woodsboro teens. Sure, there's moments where the dialogue hits the self-aware button a little bit too hard, but honestly, I thought it worked out great.
It's happening. 3 attacks so far. Do you have a gun?
I'm Sydney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
It helps me like the characters a lot more. Jenna Ortega of Wednesday and X fame is also fantastic in this movie. I think we've got ourselves someone very special in the horror limelight nowadays. Many of the heroes of the original return too, and I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it yet, but the director keeps that theme of brutal and bloody kills, horror movie tropes, return of notable characters of the franchise, and of course the potential for them to die. I'm curious to see what happens in the follow-up of Scream 6 in 2023. Unfortunately, Neve Campbell's character is not returning, but man, I really enjoyed this one.
The U.S. Defense Department has spent over $1 trillion on the most cutting-edge robot technology.
Christmas Bloody Christmas. This one's out now on Shudder. If you love Terminator and Christmas slasher flicks, you're gonna have a great time with this movie. Written and directed by Joe Bagos. He also did Bliss in 2019 and VFW, both fantastic movies if you haven't seen them yet. The story follows a young metalhead who manages a local record store who just wants to party on Christmas Eve. A supercharged robotic killer Santa Claus wakes up in a toy store and goes on a rampant killing spree as she's supposed to survive the violent night. What I love the most about this movie though is the visuals and the score alongside the pacing of the movie. The neon lighting and lo-fi feel of the film mixed with the intense brooding fuzzed out metal score makes this movie a complete blast to watch from front to back. I have seen some people dislike the main characters for constantly dropping F-bombs and being a little bit obnoxious, but it doesn't bother me. I mean, look at me, I'm a metalhead. I used to hang out with a lot of people in the metal scene. I know plenty of knuckleheads that talk like that, and they're a lot of fun. I miss those days sometimes, what can I say? Some truly disturbing and gruesome kills, but not afraid to insert some comedic relief sometimes. That ending fight scene is freaking amazing, by the way. I had way more fun with this film than I thought I would. Definitely check it out on Shudder.
It's a beautiful house.
Would it just be you staying? Or?
Men. A lot of people seem to be hating on this film for being too on the nose with the message, but I honestly thought this movie was brilliant and the cinematography was gorgeous. From the heap of excellent A24 horror films, Men was directed by Alex Garland. He did Ex Machina and also Annihilation, both fantastic movies. The film follows the story of a grieving young woman who tries to find some peace and quiet on a solo vacation to the English countryside. What I love the most about this movie though is the incorporation of not only folklore into the narrative, such as the Green Man, a symbol of rebirth, but the fact that Rory Kinner plays like 10 different characters who are inhabitants of the village of Kotzen in this horror film.
You must wonder why you drove him to it.
Why, I didn't drive him to it.
That is just crazy to me that this guy pulled this off. There's some seriously tense moments on this film, and the main protagonist, played by Jessie Buckley, she's playing Harper, does a fantastic job in her role fighting off the different male archetypes, all played by Rory Kinnear, that women typically encounter and constantly need to worry about, unfortunately. I thought this movie was a killer departure from the typical horror films that we see in cinema nowadays, and that's why I loved it so much. Men takes a lot of risks in so many ways, and the visuals also really enforce the grief-struck protagonist working through each encounter. It was a total blast from beginning to end. I loved it, and that ending was pure savagery. Definitely check it out. The Sadness. Although this technically released in 2021 in Taiwan, The Sadness was released in the US in 2022 on Shudder. You can definitely check it out now. Directed by Rob Jabis. I was not familiar with his work prior to this movie. The Sadness is not for the faint of heart. It is grotesque, gory as hell, and brutally disturbing in so many ways. The narrative follows a nation that lets its guard down after combating a pandemic. Weird. And the virus mutates into a mind-altering plague that causes its victims to enact the most cruel and ghastly things that a person could possibly think of. Murder, torture, mutilation of victims are honestly just the beginning of what people do to each other in this film, and the narrative follows a young couple attempting to reunite after the virus infects the population. Although the dialogue and the gore is just disturbing on all levels, the movie is extremely well shot, and you really do care about the main characters as they struggle to find one another again amidst the chaos. Definitely not for the faint of heart, but the movie was so excellent that I had to include it on my 2022 list.
They were more into femininity. You know what I mean? Because I think you would just look great in a dress.
This one is a Hulu release, Fresh. Please make sure that you are not eating during this movie. I made that mistake, unfortunately. Holy hell, though, I could not believe how great this movie was. An incredibly disturbing experience as a Hulu original film. Fresh was directed by Mimi Cave, who I was not familiar with before this movie, and the movie follows the story of Noah, who's just a young woman looking for love. She meets another young man, played by Sebastian Stan, who was excellent, by the way, in this movie, at a grocery store, and what was a wholesome and friendly experience goes to hell pretty goddamn quick.
It's about giving yourself over to somebody.
Noah's character, stuck in a rut, is feeling lonely and frustrated with the online dating experience. She decided to give fate a chance and hang out with Sebastian, and gives him her number, and then you're in for this grotesque narrative to follow. Part prisoner experience and part just horrifying cannibalism experience, hence the name Fresh. You trail a truly disturbing and wild ride in this movie, showing the terrifying truth of what could potentially really exist with the elite and what they do with their money in the shadows. Not for the faint of heart. Even I had a hard time with some of the scenes in this movie, but it is easily one of the best of 2022. Noah is also a hell of a protagonist, and the director did a great job making us care about her from start to end.
All the best people are.
Ain't nobody else out there like you. You know why?
Why?
All right, I'm combining two movies here, but I'm going to do X and Pearl together. I know I'm cheating to include both of them, but I find it amazing that the director T. West was able to pull off both of these movies in 2022 and also just set up a new and killer horror franchise with Mia Goth as a elderly character playing Pearl, and also young Maxine. Mia Goth, unfortunately, I feel like has been shadowed this year by Jenna Ortega, despite Mia's performances in both films being absolutely breathtaking. Jenna is also amazing, but Mia definitely deserves some of the spotlight too. I love both movies equally, but for different reasons. X is an extremely interesting, character-driven movie with great pacing and kills. What starts as a movie that seemingly plays on that horror trope of sexually active simpletons getting murdered, the writing for the characters actually shows them to be fairly complex with interesting backstories for each of them. It makes you care about all of them as you go through the film. Jenna Ortega of Wednesday on Netflix fame, and also Scream from this year. She plays Lorraine, wins the most epic scream of 2022 horror movies, by the way. It's honestly so iconic that her scream should probably be on a separate list of best screams in horror, which I will probably make. Comment below on who you think should be on that, by the way. Pearl is the prequel to X, and Mia Goth is sensational in that as well, and batshit insane playing young Pearl. What is most striking about Pearl, though, is the cinematography. It was produced in full Technicolor. It's just one of the most gorgeous films on this list to look at. It's a different movie than X and more of a personal character development of a tragic villain, but there's still some really gruesome kill scenes, and I loved it. Both characters are some of the best in 2022 period, and I cannot wait to see what TOS does next with these characters moving forward.
Yeah.
This is 476 Barbary, right?
Yeah, I'm renting this place.
Barbarian, and the award for best horror movie setup in 2022 I think goes to Barbarian. I don't want to spoil the storyline for those of you who haven't seen it yet, but the best way to truly experience and enjoy Barbarian is to go in completely blind and see it on a big screen. The opening scenes are freaking tense, man, immersing viewers with a vulnerable and terrifying premise of arriving at a double booked Airbnb in the middle of the night, already occupied by a stranger. To add to the tension, though, the Airbnb is in the middle of rundown Detroit, which most people don't want to be there at all, and main star Georgina Campbell plays the main character, who finds her rental already occupied by another man played by Bill Skarsgård.
Why don't you come inside and we'll call these idiots?
Which most of you already know, Bill plays villains. He played Pennywise in It, for example. He was on Hemlock Grove. The opening scenes are a slow build to incredibly tense moments and uneasiness, and you just don't know what's going to happen as the horrors of the night unfold. I don't want to get further into the storyline as it will spoil it for you, but it is a wild ride that is just pumping full of adrenaline, and it's a really fun horror movie. Barbarian is a great choice available now at HBO Max, so definitely go check that out. Oh, and Justin Long from Jeepers Creepers, Tusk, Drag Me to Hell is hilarious in this. His continued presence in horror is just a constant delight. Please don't stop making horror movies.
Good evening.
The Menu. This was easily a horror movie highlight of the year for me. It had just the right mix of mystery, horror, and comedy, poking fun of the elites of the culinary world, where you question if they're really truly enjoying their craft anymore with how stuck up it is. Directed by Mark Mylod, he was a fantastic director known for his work on earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. He did Shameless and Succession. The Menu tells a tale of a young couple who travels to a remote island to experience the fine, rare dining at an exclusive restaurant for the wealthy elite. My advice to those who have not seen The Menu is to go in as blind as possible. So I'm not going to spoil much for you here. I went in expecting one thing, and what I got instead was honestly even better. The night carefully descends into pure horror and madness as Ray Fiennes' performance as the head chef is easily the highlight of the whole freaking movie.
Is this bergamot I'm getting, chef?
Yes, it is.
Anya Taylor-Joy's performance was also great as one of the main characters. She starred in a few horror-related films. For example, she was in Last Night in Soho, and I love her work, man. I hope she's in more horror movies. Each course meal is a creative and thought-provoking experience as the madness unfolds in front of you. Extremely original story, a lot of fun, and I loved every minute of it, and the conclusion is extremely satisfying, so check it out.
He wants to dress up as a real guy who murdered 9 people last year.
Oh, you're not doing that.
It's just a costume.
And my number one pick is Terrifier 2. It was all around my favorite movie of the year. And I'm surprised because I honestly didn't like the first one as much as I loved Terrifier 2. The movie continues the story of Art the Clown, played by David Howard Thornton, a frightening and notorious murderer who returns to terrorize a small town on Halloween night. This is directed by Damien Leone. This is the sequel to Terrifier, released in 2016. And all I gotta say is, man, was this film a wild ride. The Terrifier series is known for its intense gore and violence. It's not for the faint of heart. Practical effects here are extremely well done, adding to that overall sense of dread that permeates through the entire film. The main character and protagonist, Sienna Shaw, played by Lauren Lavera, is easily one of the best final girls. I also love that Elliot Fulham plays Sienna's little brother, and you may recognize him from the music YouTube channel Little Punk People. The dude knows his music. I mean, clearly, check out the posters in his room in the movie. It's pretty awesome.
Welcome, Art the Clown.
But what I love is Terrifier 2's ability to set a creepy tone that just builds and builds throughout the entire film, weaving in between extremely creative and gruesome kill scenes. The cinematography is also really striking. I love that old VHS grain effect with the neon lights that just have a ton of contrast. It's striking with some imaginative and effective camera shots, in addition to those killer dreamlike sequences that just disorient the viewer throughout the runtime. Terrifier 2 is a solid horror movie that's definitely worth scoping if you love over-the-top grindhouse flicks. I thought it was better than the first movie. Just be prepared though. It is super gory and over-the-top violence, plus that little pale girl clown is just nightmare fuel. You can rent it right now on Amazon Prime Video. Definitely don't miss it. What are your favorite horror movies of 2022? Leave them down in the comments below. This is a brand new channel, so you can expect more top lists from me in the future. Welcome to Scream Bloody Horror. Scare you guys next time.